This is a New Human Living production, presented to you by Les Jensen.
Hi, I'm Les Jensen. I'm the founder of New Human Living. This discussion is going to be on relationships in general. So let's start off with some questions. What is the most important relationship that we have? The most important relationship we have is with ourselves as we relate to our God. If you're an atheist, it would be your relationship with power. And I would suggest power to be thought of as love. So let's look at that a little closer. My relationship with God, my relationship with power, my relationship with love. I'm using these different terms because not everybody believes the same way. But in all of these beliefs, there's a core aspect of how we see ourselves. And the reason this is the most important is how we see ourselves dictates how we interact with others. It dictates with how we experience others. When you come into a situation in a relationship of any kind with a boss, a spouse, a child, a stranger, you experience emotions and feelings. Well, your emotions are messengers. They only have a message for you. And that message to you is, how do you see yourself in this relationship? So, for example, if I have low self-esteem, if I don't think I'm very smart, if I have a very low relationship with myself, whenever I meet anyone else or come into any kind of an experience, I will feel powerless, I will feel inadequate, I will feel unworthy of any kind of a expansive, rewarding experience. And it has nothing to do with the person or the environment or the event itself. It's merely a reflection of myself. So the relationship I have with myself dictates how I experience everything else in my life. And that's why it's so critical how we see ourselves. The universe is extremely forgiving. We can spend years and even decades with low self-worth, with a very poor relationship with ourselves. And the universe will gladly bring us experiences that reflect this relationship back to us. For so many people, life has been a struggle with relationships. But to work on your relationship with yourself is to work on all of your relationships, because it's such a fundamental aspect with how we experience life. Since the sense of self, how we see ourselves, is so critically important, the next question might be, how can I improve the relationship I have with myself? Well, that's a really good question. That's a very powerful question, because the answer to that question would shed light on all of your relationships. How can you improve your relationship with yourself? First of all, start off with forgiveness, with compassion for yourself, with a sense of patience for yourself. No matter what your life history has been, no matter what, you are forgiven. As far as the universe is concerned, there is no event that you can have, there's no choice you can make, there's no action you can do that will disconnect you from your divinity, that will disconnect you from your salvation. Your salvation has already happened. You are forgiven. You are always forgiven. There's no memory or history that's recorded by the universe that's used against you ever. There's no judgment day in the future. The universe doesn't work that way. The choices you make now would be the judgment of what happens. If you make bad choices, you go farther into the shadow, you accumulate more karma, and if you make good choices, you go towards the light and you release karma. So once you've cleaned your karma out, you're free. So the universe doesn't have any judgment towards you. But a lot of times our ego will be very critical of our choices. We'll be very self-judgmental about our own actions and our own choices. One of the primary first steps you can have is to forgive yourself, to love yourself, to have compassion for yourself, to nurture yourself. You'll find that that'll improve all of your relationships. Some of the ways you can do that is by choosing joy throughout your day. Well, what would that look like? Well, say you tend to be really frugal and you don't give yourself many opportunities to reward yourself, where you're the last person that you give to. You could start out by making choices that bring you joy. So say you go to the restaurant, you open the menu, and you see the salmon, and you love salmon. Well, order it. What if you go and look at clothes and there's a dress you really like or an outfit that you really like? Well, get it for yourself. You're worthy. You're deserving. What if your habits have you hanging around people that are very critical of others, or judgmental of others? Walk away. You don't have to participate in these things. Self-love is making choices that honor who you are, that reflect a sense of deservingness, a sense of self-love. So let's take relationships just a little bit farther. When we interact with people in our society, there's typically some expectation of how we should behave. For example, you're in a relationship and money's tight, there'll be value put on how efficient you can be with money. So a behavior is going to be valued. Although I use this example, you could apply it to any type of relationship. A boss and an employee want to share value. The boss pays the employee money, that's value, and the employee generates product or worth in the sense of value. So it's an exchange of value. So when you look at relationships, look at the underlying expectation of exchange. What is valued in this relationship? Now, you can get off on a tangent by just trying to fulfill the expectation of others. And that's not what I'm talking about here. Certainly, if you're an employee, you need to bring value to your employer. That's obvious, huh? But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is understanding the underlying expectation of exchange. And what this is going to do is bring clarity to the motivation of others and the motivation of yourself. If in a relationship, one side of the equation is insecure and they look for security outside of themselves, they become very invested in your ability to make them feel secure. Well, this pattern is very common in relationships, but there's a fundamental problem with it. Whenever anybody puts an expectation on anybody else to make them feel a particular way, then we've already missed the mark. And I want to be clear about that. If I have an expectation that somebody else's actions or behavior is going to make me feel a particular way, I've already missed the mark. Because how I feel is something that happens inside of me. My feelings happen inside of me. And so if I expect a spouse or a partner or anybody to make me feel a particular way, then I'm putting a burden on those people that they cannot possibly sustain over time. Because in truth, they have no control whatsoever how I feel. And so often our relationships get stuck because of an expectation of feeling. So many couples want their spouse to make them feel happy, or want them to make them feel secure or safe. Certainly there can be compassion and love to provide a sense of security and safety, but ultimately how we feel is something that happens within ourselves. These are just really simple principles about the nature of relationships. We've just brushed the surface on the topic of relationships. The points we've covered are very important. The relationship you have with yourself is some of the best time you can spend improving your life. To have compassion for yourself, to have love for yourself, and to have forgiveness for yourself. I hope you've enjoyed this dialogue about relationships, because they're a very powerful aspect about how we experience life. If you want to improve all of your relationships, go to New Human Living and look at the Personal Power Fundamentals workbook. That's an excellent place to hone and refine the relationship you have with yourself. I really appreciate the time we spend together, because I know you are worth it. I know you have power in you. I know you have love in you and inspiration that will make all the difference for yourself and for humanity. And we are here for you to help you grow yourself into that wonderful, beautiful being that comes from within. So until next time, thanks for listening.
This has been a New Human Living production, presented to you by Les Jensen.